Welcome, everybody, back to another edition of Virtue's Brand of Wrestling here on the BigVitoBrand.com. And I am Virtue, being joined by my esteemed co-host, the remarkable Robbie Vice. What's up, Rob?
Man, I would say I'm happy to be here to talk about Wrestling Virtue, but I will say everything I saw on yesterday's program was anything but remarkable. So let's hopefully talk about things other than Monday Night Raw. You just take the driver's seat, my friend. Where are we going first?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to talk about Raw. I mean, I even tweeted yesterday. Even I am starting to get bored with it. And you know me, I like my Bray Wyatt. I like my Roman Reigns. Dude, I'm even starting to get upset at how they're booking Roman Reigns because, we didn't know he was going to be back yet. And the fact that he's been back, but they're just kind of doing that mid-card cruise control, but keeping him as that like top baby face.
Overexposure too, man. Both shows.
Yes. Like I would have rather had if he got healthy, they didn't even bring him back yet. Like maybe they announced he was in remission, but we didn't know when he was coming back. Maybe they could have set a goal as it got closer to SmackDown on Fox.
Right.
But this to me is the most they've ever pushed Roman Reigns in the sense that he's just a forced character on a wrestling show. Not that he's in the main event, Rob, but just the fact that he's against a McMahon and he's getting beat up just so he can end up winning in the end. Like, that's getting kind of old. But let's not talk about the main roster. Let's talk about NXT this past weekend.
I like NXT.
Now, interestingly enough, when AEW Double or Nothing happened, everybody knew this TakeOver event was going to happen relatively soon thereafter.
Absolutely.
Now, here's the deal. NXT has been generally great, good to great, for 5 years. I don't remember seeing many fans complain about any of the takeover shows. So we are now at 25. Now, they did a small 10,000-seat arena in Connecticut, but it was still probably close to sell out. I don't know if it was, but so they've been doing this thing for a while now. But it's interesting because, like, an Aaron Rift on NoDQ.com pointed out, it didn't bring hardly any extra traffic to his site this weekend, whereas Double or Nothing blew up the internet. Of course, I want to get your take on that. Now, the new flavor of the month is Double or Nothing. Mm-hmm. NXT's been around, so it has its hardcore fans. Why do you think that is? Like, it was a great show. I know you probably still think Double or Nothing was better. For some strange reason, I gave TakeOver 25 slightly higher of a grade, which we can talk about. But what's your take? I like Aaron Rift, what he stated right there.
Sure. So I think anyone who has a website dedicated to wrestling is going to be more interested in whatever drives views and clicks, because that's how people make money. Let's be real. That's a business. If you talk to Aaron off camera and completely off the record, he may have a different opinion on how that went. Now, when it comes down to Double or Nothing versus NXT 25, I think Double or Nothing had the best match of both shows. The Dusty and Cody match, I think, was the best match out of both shows by a significant amount. But if you look at bell to bell from start to finish, NXT TakeOver 25 was a better overall show. And that's me being purely objective. I enjoyed AEW more just for the simple fact that it was their first show. I'm excited to see where the brand goes. But if I'm going to put my Virtue glasses on and call it objectively, the overall TakeOver was a much better product overall. Without Cody versus Dustin Rhodes, that show, after the novelty of it wore off, may not have resonated with me as much as it did. So Triple H seems to knock it out of the park every single time. I think the goal for AEW is to be NXT, to be the TakeOver level of NXT, because that is such a high benchmark. And it was such an amazing show, and it's wrestling done right. So that's kind of my overall opinion on that.
My takeaway from TakeOver is it was 2 hours and 38 minutes. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when pay-per-views used to start at 8 o'clock and they were done at 10:45?
Absolutely.
Right? Maybe WrestleMania went till, and Starrcade, some of the WCW ones went till 11 o'clock. And now normal pay-per-views these days are 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Okay.
Too much.
TakeOver is the sweet spot. They only book 5 matches. Now, this particular one, maybe I missed it. Did they show any newcomers in the crowd like they do for the next? And maybe they only do that around like the WrestleMania and the SummerSlam.
I think that's the big 4 takeovers that they usually do things like that. I don't, if it happened, I don't remember.
And that's usually enough for me. I know they didn't do it on this one. That's usually enough for me. Like, oh wow, they're coming next, or who is that? And you might Google them and see who they are. You know, the whole thing with Moxley. It's great to have surprises like that. We're anticipating. We'll see what happens with CM Punk, but how often can you do that? So TakeOver to me, perfect blend. 5 matches, 2.5 hours. It allowed every one of those matches to get enough time. And I know, and I'm one of the proponents against, false finishes and I guess a lot of finisher maneuver type things and kickouts and spot fests. And there was a little bit, much, especially in the Gargano-Cole match. I feel Gargano-Cole were ribbing the Young Bucks. I really do, because we know Cole is infamous for doing a lot of super kicks, but I think him and Gargano, because of AEW the week before, really did that trolling the Young Bucks. What's your take on that? Do you think we saw all those super kicks because that's how they were going to do that match anyway? Or do you think that was a little rib for the against the Young Bucks?
Yeah. Absolutely, it's a rib towards the Young Bucks. Look, these guys aren't stupid. They know that they can't go out there and pull a Sami Zayn and just talk about AEW. But if they do some little wink things here, and I see nothing wrong with it. That's the same thing. It's actually a little more subtle than what they did at Double or Nothing. But they're going to do these little winks because that gets the fans talking. Look at us right now on your podcast, sir. We are talking about that. So therefore, it worked. That's exactly what they wanted to do.
Now, what else stood out from TakeOver 25 to you? To me, immediately, I see Superstar and Velveteen Dream. And I've been on the record saying that there was a little bit of supposed heat with him and Triple H and Vince McMahon when he said, he did those tweets, basically said, take me to the main roster. Vince McMahon has, even though he likes the big guys like Lars Sullivan, Braun Strowman, which he really hasn't pushed, Vince McMahon has always liked his Gold Dusts, his Chris Jerichos, his Shawn Michaels, the guys that like to fling their hair and, dance and gyrate, the Macho Man. And Velveteen Dream is a little bit of all of those, not big guy, but the flamboyant. I really think, I deep down think, if WWE needs some like main roster star to really grab that demographic of fans today's attention, like the AEW fans are, that Velveteen Dream getting a major push on the main roster could be one of Vince McMahon's secret weapons, even though right now we know he's totally mailing it in on his programming. What do you think of that? Because, literally, they brought Tyler Breeze back down, who supposedly recently just said he wanted to go to NXT.
Of course he did.
And they had a a very good match, and I want to see more of it, of miscast stars on the main roster coming back to NXT. Let's scrap the developmental. Let's not call it that anymore. These workers have been on the indies for years. There's no developmental about it, especially if they get to the main roster and McMahon doesn't push them. Let's just call NXT its alternate brand, and the brand merger for Raw and SmackDown. Just call that the main roster, and then your alternate brand is now, instead of SmackDown, it's now NXT. Absolutely. What's your thoughts on Dream and having main roster guys coming back down?
There's very few people on the roster I think are as big of money as the Velveteen Dream. Vince McMahon has tried to make John Cena The Rock. He has tried to make Roman Reigns The Rock. And guess what? He has someone with overflowing charisma that could probably pull off that type of character. The arrogant, the flamboyant. He has everything going for him. He's solid in the ring. His promos are gold, and he oozes charisma. Every time he's on the screen, I want to see what he has to say. I want to see his match. I want to read what he's saying on Twitter. Everything about this guy is money. I'm worried for the guy, because if he goes to the main roster, is he just going to become Velveteen and then have a stupid gimmick, and then 3 months later he's going to be dancing when they'll bring back Funkasaurus? Like, I have zero faith in Vince McMahon doing anything with these NXT guys. But if he managed it right, this guy could be the biggest thing in WWE.
Let's look at this. Remember, I said, okay, I'm not buying in this Triple H, Stephanie, and Vince McMahon creative war that's been leaked. Supposedly the indifference is backstage. This is all a work for a big angle if they ever need to pull it off. because AEW gets too big. Think about if that is true. Triple H, you got your main piece on Triple H's side right there, right on the silver platter, Velveteen, American Dream. I mean, seriously, you know what I mean? And I guess everybody's so against Vince McMahon just because of how we see Raw every week. And even to the extent SmackDown's been up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that it's just going to be that way until he, moves on or passes away. But I don't know, man. I would like to think they're sabotaging their product, which we've talked about, just to make it look great when and if they need to. And I don't know, man. To me, I think that if Dream doesn't have Vince's eye for something big down the road, even if it's against Vince, like CM Punk was, then Vince McMahon truly does have dementia.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. And that would be, now I'm someone who believes the Montreal Screwjob was somewhat of a work. I think that parts of that were known by Brett, Vince in a closed door meeting because, let's face it, everyone made money from that. So this would be, in my opinion, the biggest work since something like that. And if Vince pulls that off, then he has worked everybody, and he will go down as the greatest. And he's already going to be the greatest promoter of all time. But he will be a modern genius, and that would be the best. Because you know what? Who else besides Vince McMahon would do something like that to set up his retirement and his story angle? He probably has a contingency plan if he dies. They have some weird, obtuse angle that everyone in his family is uncomfortable with, but he's probably demanded that it happens. So who knows?
Dude, and Vince Russo even said, there is no way, and I don't know if we talked about it on this show or if I did on another one, that they can't be that incompetent. Vince McMahon, Paul Heyman, Stephanie Triple H, Jeff Jarrett, Bruce Pritchard, whoever's in that inner circle of team creative to these days, they cannot be that incompetent to know that this product is not bad today on Raw and SmackDown, specifically Raw. So these people did it when it was great, and there's just no way Vince Russo said these people can be doing this stuff on purpose. He thinks that there's a possibility it's all to a greater plan, whether that's to make SmackDown on Fox look great with minimal effort because they've tanked it so much now. Who knows? Before we move on to the main topic this week, Rob, you saw Matt Riddle one more time. I know you were on the fence. You don't like that bro character.
Right.
Thoughts on Matt Riddle and Roderick Strong? Because, as you know, I didn't like Matt Riddle when he was on the Indies. I was like, dude, another MMA guy, pot smoking bro. And now that he's on the main roster and he's even doing stuff ahead of time, like Velveteen Dream on social media, he's basically calling out Brock Lesnar. I like that. I like that. So what do you think?
I'm still not a fan of Matthew Riddle. I think he's a fun worker in the ring. I respect what he does in the ring. I think he needs bigger shorts. I think he needs to wear boots. I think he needs to drop the bro gimmick. I think it's played out. I'm just not a fan of it. And if anything, he irritates me to the point where I want to see him get beat up. But at the same time, I'm drawn into his matches because he has a fun style to watch. So I give his character a D+. I give his work rate an A+. I guess that makes him a B+ player. So I thought the match was pretty good. I thought it had a good ending. I liked the GTS into the German suplex, I think was towards the finish of that match, right?
Yeah.
The guy's got a lot of talent. I'm interested to see if he goes to the main roster, what changes. But as much as I find his gimmick cringeworthy, I will absolutely never hesitate to watch one of his matches because his work rate is second to maybe he's in that handful of people that just has great matches. I would love to see a really big him and Velveteen feud. You know what I mean? Just like a really big send off for either one of them. So I don't know. And I got mixed feelings. He's kind of growing on me a little bit, but I'm still turned off by the gimmick that just seems like it was better off in 1998.
Well, he could be the guy that ends up making Brock Lesnar his bitch one day. We'll see. And I know fans are going to appreciate that. So
yes, that's how you get big
We'll
points.
see, because he's in the ring. He'll take legit licks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he
because
will.
of his background. And so therefore, him and Brock, they're probably both going to beat each other up. And that's what makes that potential feud one day compelling to me. Right? I mean, it's almost like it would become real wrestling.
You know, and with Brock Lesnar, I will say this. I don't hate Brock Lesnar. I don't love Brock Lesnar. I have an emotion that is the worst thing that you can be as a professional wrestler. I'm just indifferent to that entire angle. I don't care. I don't want to watch it. And I think that is much worse than me wanting to boo him and yell at him like if he came out, I just don't think I would have a reaction. I think I would just stand, you know, and watch this stuff happen, but I don't care anymore. I'm over all of it.
Well, he ditched the boombox thing and got serious just like that.
Yep.
But we'll see what happens at Super Showdown. All right, meat and potatoes of this video. Wrestling fans, Rob, when do you think they became critics? Now, I'm going back as a child in the 80s when I started watching it. I didn't know any of this stuff. I just watched it as a kid into the mid-90s, and then boom, you know, NWO gets big with WCW Nitro. Attitude Era starts. You had ECW, Internet Era. Everybody, you know, I remember being in the library in high school looking at on NoDQ.com, on LordsOfPain.net, reading the Raw spoilers for the weeks they taped, this and that. And I still didn't feel like I was a critic, or many people were critics back then. Maybe your Meltzers and the people that were there doing dirt from day one.
Yeah.
But when do you think fans in general, I'm talking the fans that actually go and sit in the stands, that buy the WWE Network, not necessarily the dirt sheet writers with inside sources. When did fans become critics, in your opinion, to where it's ridiculous? Like, bring up like an era, maybe a talent or two. What do you think?
So I think a lot of it started near the end of WCW, but I think the people became really annoying with their criticism during the John Cena v. Randy Orton era. I think that was the end of Attitude, the start of Ruthless Aggression. It was kind of new, but it was just like a dumbed down version of what they'd seen before. And that's when I think a lot of these rehash matches started happening. And that's when people started shitting all over everything. You know, as soon as Cena dropped his Thugonomics thing and him and Randy Orton had 45 matches over the course of 5 years, I just think that is when I started to see a lot more of the negative criticism from fans. And everyone, you know, I know I'm a hypocrite. Everyone wants to be an armchair Tuesday morning, you know, critic of what happened the night before, but I just think it's right around that era, maybe 2009, 2010, maybe like 10 years ago. I just think that's when it got worse.
All right, so I'm going to say, and I see what you did there, and the fact that I remember we had an original brand split, right, and it got really watered down, and so that was a good time, because I think it was back right into that whole time frame you were talking about.
Sure.
I want to say to me, it's closer to the era of probably when maybe Shawn Michaels retired. The Undertaker streak was still going alive. But the CM Punk thing. Now, I don't think it was when CM Punk did the pipe bomb, because nobody expected that at the time. Right. Nobody said, push CM Punk. Push him. You know what I mean? They just kind of knew Cena was the guy. Then they had all of their other, you know, Triple H was still doing his thing, Taker, all of his things at Mania. I think that Monday night in Las Vegas, the seeds were planted with CM Punk for the fans to be critics. But because they were so excited to see Punk, it didn't happen until months later, even maybe years later, when Punk started, you know, he got built up, but then you kind of saw he got pulled back down. The Triple H feud. Yes, he became the WWE champion and had it for all of those days in a row, but he never main evented WrestleMania. And I think that the night he quit after Royal Rumble, and then that next year people got pissed when Daniel Bryan was eliminated from the Royal Rumble relatively early in 2015, and then they course corrected and got Bryan into the main event going into WrestleMania 30. They then said to the fans, in my opinion, we'll give you what you want if you complain enough. Okay? Punk planted the seed, but the fans didn't want to necessarily see Punk up there. It just he was doing good with straight edge society.
Right.
It just kind of happened, and he became this big star. Fans then probably started thinking, hey, wow, maybe if we kind of like certain guys, WWE will listen. Well, the whole Punk thing happened. He had a good run, made a lot of money, but never got to where he wanted to. That's why he got burned out and left the business. The Daniel Bryan thing happened. Fans revolted. They didn't want to see Roman. A lot of people say if Roman won the Royal Rumble the year Punk left at 14, Roman might have got received better. But by 2015, it was so forced, and the Daniel Bryan getting eliminated early. So I think the fans truly became full-on social media online critics, and this all stems right next to the WWE Network era when that launched, as Daniel Bryan getting placed into the main event of WrestleMania because fans started revolting. Like, what's your thoughts on that? So I put a picture of CM Punk on the thumbnail for this video because I think the seeds were planted then. Because of that, it allowed them to voice their opinion because of everything Punk was preaching. Now I think because of the Daniel Bryan push in 2015, fans will always continue to crap on whatever WWE forces them, and they're going to be the big critics. It's just what it is. That's my opinion.
I think you have some good points. Let me ask you this. Have you ever worked a retail job when you were younger?
I did.
Okay, so check this out. And you've seen this probably then in your time working, is when customers start complaining and they start instantly getting their way, but not until they start bitching about everything, you train your customer base then to nonstop bitch so they can get extra stuff. If you have a child and that child doesn't like their bedtime and constantly complains, and then you let them stay up, you're conditioning that child then to just always fight with you. So if you are a giant company and you start giving in the fans when they start making a big stink, you're conditioning the fans to do exactly that. So that makes a lot of sense. I think the fans maybe started getting more jaded back in that Cena Orton. But yeah, I think if you want to put a date on when it finally got to a boiling point, I think I would concede that to you, that you're probably right in that sense. And they started conditioning fans that if they're smarky and shitty, that, oh, okay, you know what? We're going to do it because we're sick of you booing all this stuff. But then recently, Vince McMahon has taken exception to that. And like the more they booed Roman, he pushed him harder. So I don't really know the message they're sending now, but I actually agree with what you're saying. I think I would concede that.
And social media has been around, like you said, back in the era, back into the mid 2000s even. Mm-hmm. I just think it's really blown up ever since, CM Punk had his run telling the fans, I'll be the voice of the voiceless. Then the fans used him, and then they translated that into, oh my God, well, we can vent on Twitter. We can vent on social media. And then they literally got their way. I mean, literally, because of Daniel Bryan in 2015. He got eliminated early in the Royal Rumble. Next thing you know, he's in both headlining matches at Mania. And now, interestingly enough, my theory on this, go to WrestleMania 30. He beats Triple H in the opener to get to the main event. We know he becomes the WWE champion. That's WWE totally giving in to these fans. But guess what Vince McMahon finally pulled the trigger on? He was giving the fans what they wanted in Daniel Bryan. He let Lesnar defeat Undertaker and end the streak to trump anything Bryan would do. See what I mean? If you go back and look at WrestleMania 30, Undertaker losing to Lesnar is significant because I think that's Vince McMahon's reaction to, hey, I'll let you have what you want in Daniel Bryan, but I'm going to take the streak away. You know what I mean?
No, because I remember watching that match. I was actually living in Columbus at the time, and I just moved down there, so I was watching it by myself. And if you ask me the most memorable part of that, I would say it's Undertaker, the streak, and then the guy's reaction that's burned into my memory, and Heyman's reaction. You're right. He gave the fans what they wanted, but he took give them nothing, take from them everything. He gave them a little bit, but he took so much more back in that moment. You're absolutely right.
And before we wrap it up, look at this year. He gave the fans Rollins, Kofi, and Becky all at WrestleMania, and yet look at the TV product. It's still crappy.
Yeah.
And, of course, if you're not making it compelling, the fans are going to say it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. So the fans have their champions. Right now, I know Becky did lose the one title, but she's still Raw Women's Champion. Seth's Universal, and Kofi's still WWE Champion. Now, all of a sudden, he's like a superhero, and he doesn't feel pain and walks up from every beating. But here they are. The fans got what they want, but yet they're still saying the shows are shitty.
Yeah.
See what I mean? It's entrenched now. We're in that era of fans complaining, and I'll see people in the No DQ chat. They're every week for Raw and SmackDown. Guys, ready? Raw start, like it's a countdown. 6 o'clock Monday evening. Raw starts in 2 hours. 7:30 on Tuesday evening. SmackDown on in 30 minutes, like they're excited. And then the show starts going on, and those same people, oh my God, ugh, Meh. You know what I mean? Why are you promoting it, like being excited that it's on, and then you know you're going to just end up bashing the show in the chat the whole time?
People want to be miserable, man.
That's where we at. That's where we're at. That's it, man. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just a really quick snippet. I want to say that my favorite part of NXT was Shayna Baszler. I think she is – I love watching her matches. She's believable. She's what Ronda Rousey should have been. And that's really the only thing I wanted to add to that is I really enjoy her as a performer. I hope she stays in NXT for a little bit longer, and I hope that she comes to the main roster and just starts destroying people.
Dude, and a true heel. She gets booed.
A true heel,
it's not a heel like, oh, you're cool, and she gets cheered. She legit gets booed.
And it's not like X-Pac heat either. It's legit. She's heel. They respect her.
Like Io Shirai, Kairi Sane, all the people, the girls that have worked her, more of baby faces. Because when the heel's working like it should, you get behind the baby face. I actually I'm usually a heel fan watching that match. I don't hate Shayna, but I was like, wow, she's making me love Io Shirai. And I got a thing for hot Japanese wrestler chicks too.
All power to you, man.
But and of course that tag match at NXT, dude, the ladder match. I mean, dude, that took me back to Edge, Christian, Hardy's, Dudley's. I mean, phenomenal. I understand. I am a wrestling psychology guy like Jake Roberts and Ricky Steamboat, but I know that it's just not going to be that way anymore. Mm-hmm. So I did notice in some of these NXT matches, in between all the high spots, false finishes, kickouts, they were at least trying to implement some psychology. Gargano with the knee, you know what I mean? And as long as I can see some attempt and you continue to sell it and don't forget about it too often, you know, and the announcers like Ronaldo cover it with adrenaline rush.
I'm okay. Right?
Yes.
Triple H is the savior, man. He's going to save us all from obscurity. He's been my favorite since I was 10 years old, and he continues to show me why he's the best.
And he had every right to say, dude, I mean, if he was proud of that NXT show, think about it. It was just a no-name town in Connecticut. I mean, sorry, I'm not a big Connecticut fan.
Right.
In a little 10,000-seat arena, and it still felt pretty epic and spectacular because they put on the show that the fans wanted to see, and it wasn't terribly long and boring. There was really no boring part. You didn't even need an Ambrose type or a Moxley type to appear. Yep. It had enough there. And, you know, you have your teases of Ciampa coming back healthy one day. That actually, did they show that as part of the broadcast? I can't remember.
I don't know if that was on afterwards, but Triple H basically was like, he's not clear for contact, which means he's not close to coming back, I think is kind of what, I don't know if that's kayfabe or not, but that's kind of what he was talking about.
And Tyler Breeze did an excellent job of going back down there like he never left. And it makes me want to see other talents that are lost in the shuffle on Raw. Stop chasing that damn 24/7 title. Go back down to NXT and compete for the North American or the NXT title, or for the females against the NXT women's title, or tag team. You know what I mean? They had War Raiders. They had War Raiders relinquish the belts in NXT, and now they're not even used on the main roster. I'm watching these 4 young teams, and I'm like, okay, it's time to get new teams over down there.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, why is the War Raiders up on the main roster if they're not using them? They should still be down here competing for the tag titles.
Last I know, who are the tag team champions on Raw?
I believe it's Hawkins. I think it's Hawkins and Ryder. I believe it's Hawkins.
I wanted to say B team. Okay.
No, Hawkins and Ryder.
And that's not good. That's not good.
And of course, you know it's Daniel Bryan and Rowan on SmackDown.
Yeah, I do know that because they're on TV. So,
but all right, yeah, SmackDown's on. So do your plugs. Let's get out of here.
I'll do my one plug. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Xenomecha, XENOMECHA. I am remarkable. I am Robbie Vice. Thank you for tuning in. Virtue, there's a bunch of other places, and you have 60 plugs anyway, so why don't you do the other 2 that I sometimes show up on?
Well, first of all, you can follow me on Twitter at NoDQ_Virtue. Go to my Facebook, NoDQ.com/Virtue with the lowercase v. Once a month or so, once every 3 weeks, remarkable Robbie Vice and I do these shows on WrestlingWithWrestling.com, where we've been talking about AEW, I think, 2 out of the last 3 times, and those shows are getting a lot more attention than our WWE show. So you can check us out there. I do stuff on NoDQ.com. I'm still waiting for Rob to come up with a NoDQ panel topic, so he will be finally making a debut there eventually. I'm leaving that up to him now, though.
Oh, my God.
And, of course, right here on the BigVitoBrand.com for Virtue's brand of wrestling. That's all I got for the remarkable Robbie Vice. I am Virtue. We'll see you next time.